Hi, let's talk about R.A.P Ferreira, the latest project to come out of R.A.P Ferreira, a philosopher and rapper who used to go by the name Milo. Under that name, he dropped albums such as So the Flies Don't Come, as well as A Toothpaste Suburb, and Who Told You to Think, as well as his other album that I can't pronounce. In 2011, he dropped his mixtape I Wish My Brother Rob Was Here, which really was the catalyst to his career. However, he has stated that he does not want to go by the name Milo anymore, stated that he wants to be known as R.A.P Ferreira, and this is his latest album under the new pseudonym. Now, R.A.P Ferreira is not Rory turning over a new leaf in any way, shape, or form. This is still very much an abstract, experimental hip-hop album, in the same vein that you would hear under a Milo project. The one thing that I will say is different from this album compared to his other albums under the Milo name is that this album is way more jazzier. Like, jazz rap has never been so big in Milo's discography, but this album just really is like jazz rap through and through. I had a trepidation going into this album since it is 18 tracks long at 52 minutes, and jazz rap is quite hard to dissect from a lyrical standpoint, from a production standpoint, and this album was definitely not easy to penetrate, and I still don't even think I've penetrated this album at all. However, what we get on this album essentially is Rory kind of being the philosopher he is and the philosophy that he studied in college, and just spitting some really interesting bars throughout the entire runtime, matched with a production that's not only very jazzy, but very much complements what Rory is saying. This album starts off with the track DECORUM, which more or less introduces every member of this album, or every working member of this album. Rory kind of introduces the Jefferson Park Boys, who helped him make this album production-wise, as well as Kenny Siegel, who plays the role of executive producer on this album. And never have I heard an introduction track that isn't so corny. Like, this is a great way to introduce your album. It starts this album off on a really nice note. We then get to the song Greens, which starts off with a very funny line. It's a meme that's going around. It's Rory kind of saying, "Open the fucking pit," which is an interesting point I would like to make. Across this album, Rory does come off very serious, but there are moments like this at the beginning of Greens where he interplays some silliness to kind of break up the serious tone of the record. It is a nice touch, and something that I really do admire in a project like this. I'll admit two things. One, it's going to be very hard to dissect everything Rory is trying to say on this album. And two, it is a chore that I think is just a little bit above my pay grade. It's something that I can try to do, but I feel like I would mess up at some points. I will point out interesting motifs that run through this entire project lyrically, but I'm not going to point out all of them because I don't even think I know all of them. Lyrically, this album has some interesting plays on it. It has an edge of social commentary. It has an edge of, a belief on the world. Throughout this entire project, lyrically, Rory comes off like a philosopher. Not to say that this album is telling you the truth in the same way as maybe like a Spanish love song album would, because albums that are blunt are the ones that are going to be hard to digest. This album isn't blunt. This album is very verbose, very heady. This album is an enigma wrapped in a riddle that you need to solve a 16-digit code to unlock. And what's amazing about this album is that the flow that Rory incorporates on most of these songs really interconnects itself into the production. For example, the beats on this album are very unconventional for a rap artist. Not to say I'm blown away by how Rory can rap over these instrumentals. I've heard crazier. Trust me. Have you heard of Danny Brown's Atrocity Exhibition? That shit is amazing. But back to this album. So again, they're not the most adventurous instrumentals I've ever heard. However, there are moments on this album that I was kind of wowed by. Like the song Dust Up, which production-wise sounds like a post-rock instrumental. And it's interesting to note that there are only two instruments on this song, an omnichord and some bass. The way Ferreira can rap over an instrumental like this is awe-inspiring. Truly transcends the regular rapper in any way, shape, or form. And it's songs like this that make this album so good and so much more of a treat to go back to. Because R.A.P Ferreira is not interested in hitting you with honesty and bluntness. I think he does hit you with some honesty here and there, but he is more interested in making you question beliefs. Questioning things from the way our world works to the way the music industry works, like on the song No Starving Artist, where the lyrics are no starving artist, just artist starving. Interesting wordplay there. And I also like how this song also plays into the song Mythical. This motif of starving artists is continued on this track in particular. I also think that the song sounds very mythical. There are a lot of ideas on this record that I think panned out in R.A.P Ferreira's favor. I also think the two soul artists, Mike Ladd and Open Mike Eagle, deliver some interesting points on this album, contrasting with Rory in a really good way. The song Golden Sardine is an example of a track that I'm not so head over heels for. This song in particular feels a lot longer than it actually is, and is a prime example of what happens when the production on an album is quite boring and tedious and the artist is not really saying much. To stand out amongst the rest of this album is pretty hard to do lyrically. However, R.A.P Ferreira seems to do something different with each track. Or if he incorporates another motif from another song, it's done in an interesting way. This song in particular just doesn't feel as essential as the other tracks do, and I think the ending of this album kind of leaves an open question to be answered. Actually, a lot of these songs kind of leave an open question to be answered. Rather, this song in particular, the track MASTERPLAN, feels unsatisfactory. I do wish it ended the album off in a more climactic way, and I do wish each song played into each other's strengths. But criticisms aside, what we have on this album are 16 great jazz rap songs that, interestingly enough, put me in a state of hypnosis throughout this entire record. I will say I do kind of get out of that hypnosis with the track Doldrums, and the other songs after this song kind of put you back in that state of hypnosis. And while I don't go back to that state often, again, this album just has a way in putting you in some sort of trance, and I love a lot of the lyrics said on this album, especially the song Cycles, which in my opinion is a great companion piece to the track before it, Dust Up. Rory decides to interject with this spoken word passage that bisects this song. He speaks it, but it's actually from Susan Sontag's essay, The Pornographic Imagination, and it does play into the song in a very interesting way. And when R.A.P Ferreira comes back rapping into this song, he says something that just sticks with me through the rest of this album. But things go backwards, the wrong people get placards, you get a collection of spatulas, heavy brow lines, sacrificing downtime for the wrong guy's good graces. And just this verse as a whole is something that really made me look at the lyrics on this album from another perspective. Because it doesn't feel like Ferreira is coming off as just another rapper trying to say something. He comes off more or less like a concerned citizen, noticing the flaws in humanity and in society. And while this album might sound pretentious from an outsider perspective, I think the moments of sardonic humor that interplay into some songs kind of break up the pretentious monotony that this album could have done. From jazzy instrumentals to unconventional beats that Rory is rapping over, Purple Moonlight Pages is an album that I didn't even know I needed in 2020. It's an album that I admire and appreciate for how abstract it is, but how truthful it's trying to be. An album with production that is still really interesting the more I go back to, and an album whose lyricism is something that I will probably continue to dissect from years to come. It's also an album that makes me realize every album is different in any way, shape, or form. It's albums like this that make me sit back and really think about them. Because honestly, on like the first 3 listens, I was kind of like, yeah, I like the album, but I don't get it. But the more time you spend with this project, the more it reveals itself to you. And I do have criticisms here and there from this album, and this album can be a little lengthy at points. However, this is still a great project that I recommend to you. So personally, it's a very strong A-. However, I am curious to know what are your thoughts and opinions on this album down below. Let me know what albums you want me to review next, and that is it. Like, comment, share, do whatever you want. Let me know how I can improve future videos down below. Remember, it's only my opinion because music is subjective.